Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be starting the build of this, the Meng Chieftain mk10. This is a really nice kit, came out pretty recently, and Meng tends to be one of the better companies out there for model kits. So, I'm really excited to start this build. Let's get right into it. So, starting out here, we are going to be getting the road wheels done on this kit. And now, Meng kits tend to have pretty complicated and very well detailed road wheels. And the awesome thing with these road wheels is they are undergated, meaning that the piece of sprue that goes to the actual part itself is on the underside instead of the actual visual and showing side of the parts. And this really does help make it easier to clean and to kind of just make all of the parts nice without having to put so much effort into them. Now, I've seen this on other kits like Gundam models and stuff like that, but they really aren't that common on modern or older model kits for tanks and armor and stuff. So it's really good to see companies like Meng starting to use this really neat technology to make cleanup and making your model kits look good even easier. So you can see here, I'm just throwing together all of the parts of these wheels. These wheels did have a lot of small little parts to them, but they all fit together perfectly and really don't need much cleanup other than cleaning off those undergated sprues, so it was really easy. Doing the same with the drive sprockets here and kind of just throwing them together with some normal simple extra thin Tamiya cement as I normally do. And they all fit up really nice, and that's what I say, the best part about these Meng kits is they really fit nice and just go together in really good ways. And after the road wheels are done, we're going to move on to the suspension components. Now, these are some of the little suspension arms of the kit, and they're really nice parts. This kit also has a fully workable suspension system to it, with springs and everything, and it makes for a really cool looking kit with some really cool little features. And here you can see these little springs, actual little metal springs that come with the kit, and they're really nice and look good in scale. So they'll go on to two of these little suspension arms here, throwing them together. And once you put them together, you put them into these nice little cradle pieces. These cradle pieces hold them together and you kind of sandwich the suspension arms in between the two bits, making them look real nice and kind of covering up any annoying parts. And once they're together, as you can see, they work really well, moving back and forth and compressing in on each other, just like how the real Chieftains have it with their kind of rocker bogie suspension. Now, for the front set of these, because you need to build 6 of these whole assemblies, but the front 2 sets have these extra control arms that really just add a little bit of detail. I don't know what they are used for on the actual tank, but in this case, they just add a bit of detail, and because they move up and down with the rest of the suspension, as you can see here, they really add some nice complexity to the kit. And then just adding a few little other details and things that need to be added to the suspension pieces themselves, like these little holding arms for the kit's side skirts. Then, after all 6 of those are done, we're moving on to doing all of the details on the chassis itself. Now, this chassis has a lot of really nice details already on it, but you add in a few more. And then we're going to be adding on the little drive sprocket gears. And this had just some little ejector pin pieces on it, but those just snap off, and they're in an area that was completely hidden once they're completely assembled, so you don't even really need to clean them off. So I just snapped those pieces off to make sure everything fit up nice, and then went about gluing it together just how I normally would. Putting some little cement on the edges and throwing it together, making it really nice. Then we're actually going to be gluing it onto the kit, and of course just the normal way. Coating the area with some thin cement and putting it on. Of course, all of these parts fitting up really well. There's only a few little parts of this entire kit so far that I've experienced that haven't fit up perfectly, and I'll touch on those later. But for the most part, especially on these smaller little pieces, they fit up great. Now, we're on to a little bit of the kit here, and this is the kind of most surprising bit. The only bit I really saw a major amount of kind of mold flash or mismolding on the kit was on these front idler wheel housings. But it was in an area that was really easy to clear off, so of course I did, and then just went about gluing it on the normal way. Then we're on to the other half of the chassis of this kit, and they have you add in these internal supports as well as kind of a gluing piece that you can throw on just in there. They'll really help kind of solid up the chassis, and with some of the other kits that don't do stuff like this, it really is noticeable with how flexible they are. Then we have some little holes we need to drill for extra little armor pieces or storage blocks that go into the kit. And these are really easy to drill, just drilling them out and then making sure to clean up any kind of messed up parts or flash when you've cut the other side. Then we're onto the lights, and I like to paint these before I actually put them on the model just because they're way easier to do. So I line the inside with some nice silver paint, and then of course I'll glue the glass piece on top once that silver paint has dried. And you can see that here, having glued those on. As well, the Chieftains have one light blacked out. I believe this is for IR or night, and you can run those like that. So I just painted them up before, and then I'm going to glue them onto the kit. Once they're glued on, I'll be using the same liquid masking tape that I got from AK, and it's worked out pretty well. It worked out very well on my last build, the Object 279, on its lights, so I look forward to using it again here on all of this kit's nice glass pieces. Now this stuff, you really just apply it with a brush, making sure to kind of get a nice thick coat onto it. Sometimes you might want to go back and do 2 coats on it just so you have a good thick layer. And then once that's dried up, I'm going to put the cages that go over top of the lights. These were modeled very nice. They did have a little bit of flash on them, but they were very nice, especially for a plastic piece. Good enough that I didn't feel I had to replace them. Now, I'm going to make an addition to this kit because the hatch on this kit doesn't seem to be designed to be left so it can be opened. You're supposed to glue it on, but I like having opening hatches on my kits. So I cut out this little piece of plastic from one of the sprues and glued it onto the back side of this main pin that goes on the hatch. And this will just allow the hatch to pop open and slide around without actually falling off. As you can see here, it just pops open real nice and can slide over just like how the real ones do. But because I put that little piece on there, it won't come out. Then we're on to adding in the turret ring. It's interesting, I've never seen a kit like this where the turret ring is actually separate and it just fits in, but it works good and it's a nice, very well detailed turret ring inside. And of course it fit up and glued in really nicely. So then after that, we're going to move on to doing some of the little paint stuff. And these are for all of the viewports and glass pieces on this kit. I just kind of coated the backs of them in silver paint while they were still on there, just so when they're installed in the kit, we can go and paint over top of them, and once we take off that liquid masking tape, which you guys see I put on here, they'll have a nice reflective backing when you look inside them. Then we're onto some photo etch, and the photo etch in this kit is very nice, a lot better than the really terrible photo etch in the Object 279 kit I did last week. Now, this is really simple process. I just cut them out of the sprue, kind of file them down a bit, and then just use some super glue to glue these vent covers on. These vent covers do look really nice on this kit, making everything really good and just adding a ton of little small details, really good for what photo etch is good for. And with that, the two kind of half sides of the chassis assembly are done, so we're going to glue them together. Now, I used the thicker Tamiya cement for this just because I wanted to make sure that it was really stuck together and really went together well, and I wasn't going to have to worry about it coming apart or anything like that. So, just applying a fair bit of that and clamping them together. Now, this of course fit up very well on this kit, as Meng kits really tend to do, and just a little bit of finicking to get some of the little pins in place. But once I did, they went up just right. After those parts are all together, we're just going to add in some of the other little details and parts that need to go on the backs and sides of this kit that couldn't be added together when these weren't actually put together. And here we're just putting together the back kind of kit that goes on it, adding those little exhaust pipes and parts, and then of course attaching it fully to the kit, doing of course the exact same thing we've done with that. And then we're on to the fenders. Now it's interesting with this kit, most tank kits I've built have tended to have the fenders as a singular piece. Now I know this is somewhat more common on Russian tanks, but this Chieftain has these side and kind of fender pieces, track guards, as separate pieces that you glue on afterwards. And it allows you to kind of do all these nice little detail parts and all that. And then I'm going to add the mirrors on here. Honestly, if you're building this kit, I would say leave these mirrors off until after the kit is basically done, or at least you're done the chassis, because they really tend to get in the way and they're pretty fragile, so they can snap off. So once we get all those fender details put on, it's time to actually attach them to the kit. And these were the worst fitting parts of the kit, really. The back part really went on completely fine, but the front area really was difficult to fit in, and I didn't end up filming most of it just because it was kind of off and really tricky to do, and I kind of had to look at it pretty close, and it wasn't too easy to film all that. But with enough haggling, it got in and worked fine. Now, this kit comes with some nice pre-modeled tow cables, which we're not going to use, and we're just going to completely cut up to get the tow hooks off, because I like to make my own tow hooks and tow cables that are malleable and movable, plus one of those broke in the box, so I didn't want to use them anyway. Then we're on to working and putting on the drive components. Now that the chassis is fully assembled, we can throw on those suspension components, just using a little bit of that stronger Tamiya, not thin glue, to make sure they stick on real well. And then we're going to throw on the drive wheels, just like that. All the drive wheels are thrown on and look all good. And you can see all of the suspension components work really nice and look really good on this kit. Then we're going to move on to the tracks. And these tracks are individual links, which thankfully each individual link only needs one snip from their little sprue pieces. So it made for a quick and easy cleanup, which most of these track pieces didn't even really need any cleanup. They just kind of came off of the sprue and were in clean enough shape that you can just build them together. And building together on this kit is actually a really interesting thing, because Meng includes this nice little jig that you can throw together and put all of the track pieces in. And it really made for a fun experience making these tracks, and they seem to stick together pretty much better than any other real tracks out of plastic that I've seen in a kit. And so you just put them all in that jig, and then you have these little pin pieces that you go in and then you just push them in, and they're a very hard pressure fit. You really have to push down on them, and you can kind of look in the back and see, make sure that they've all pushed in real well and gone in. And then once you're done that, you can kind of just pull the piece up and all of those little pin pieces snap off, and you have a new link of track. And you have to do that for each side. This kit says 94 or 95 sections of track per side. I found 94 actually worked a little bit better. I like to have the tracks on my kits a little bit tighter so they move a bit better. But once you get those on and kind of done, you can just pull them over and work them through. Because all the links on this track are workable and all the suspension components go together so well, they fit up really nice. So with that, since this episode's already getting pretty long, that will be it for this week. Next week, we're going to be finishing up the turret on this kit, as well as adding in any other little extra details that we might want to add. We are also going to be magnetizing the side skirts of the kit so they're removable, and you can take them off and see all of those really cool details on the insides of that suspension. So, if you liked this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you want to see the next parts coming out, and if you have any comments, feel free to comment. See you in the next one.